2 years after the release of Hammer's first Dracula film, starring Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing, we got the first direct sequel, 1960, The Brides of Dracula. This one doesn't feature Christopher Lee. I knew that going in, but I did know that it featured, once again, Peter Cushing's Van Helsing. So given that that was the biggest draw for me in the original Dracula, I was all on board for this. Took a while getting there. So Cushing's Van Helsing doesn't show up until half an hour into this film. And this isn't like, you know, modern day 2 hour plus running time. You're looking at like 80 odd minutes. So that's literally a third of the film gone before we even get to Van Helsing. So for me, that was a bit of a, oh, okay, we could have got there faster. The first act of this film, it's quite plodding, I'll say that. And there's a lot of little things going on that don't really amount to much. So it follows this story of this woman, Marianne. She's on her way to this ladies' school to become a teacher, and she kind of gets derailed, so to speak. People are kind of working against her, essentially to capture her, essentially to send her to this castle that is owned by these barons, this Baron Meinster, a woman, and it all gets a little bit convoluted. Turns out, so this woman is holding her son in chains in this castle, and Marianne finds out about it and helps to get him free. But it turns out he was kept there with damn good reason. He's a vampire. So yeah, that kicks our story off going. The only problem is all that takes like half an hour to get going. It really does feel like they're going around the houses just to kickstart this story, really. I feel like we could have started right off the bat with Marianne on her way, just getting lost and being picked up straight away by this woman, this Baron Meinster woman, and we'd just be straight into the plot. But instead we do all this running around with this crazy character that isn't really a character. He's just a man in the woods who then pays the horseman who's taking Marianne, and it seems like he's the one kind of orchestrating things, but then we never see him again, and it's all just a bit, yeah, like I say, it's a bit muddled. It's a bit muddled. So the script for this was written primarily by Jimmy Sangster, who wrote the script for Dracula. And it's been well documented that both Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee were not that big on him as a writer. They didn't like his dialogue.
You've been badly frightened, haven't you? But there's nothing to be afraid of now. I'm a doctor.
Peter Cushing had another writer brought in to this to kind of clean things up, and there are moments in the film where you can see, well, thank God for Peter Cushing is all I'll say for that, because there are certain elements in this film that are definitely better as a result of having changed Sangster's script. But the fact is, this is a script that was written by many hands. They went through quite a few iterations, and I feel like that does show. Now, as I say, despite that muddy first half, once Cushing arrives, once Van Helsing comes into the story and starts doing his thing, it does pick up quite a great deal. We're into business as usual, essentially. You know, the stuff you recognise from the first one is right here from the second act onwards. Everything in that first act, it's not a lost cause. There's still some good stuff in there. It just, as I say, takes a while to get there. One of those elements is Freda Jackson, who plays this cackling, kind of deranged housekeeper. So she's the housekeeper for for these barons, and she goes to number 11. Let's just say that she's now she's given the thankless task of mostly being exposition. So there's a lot of stuff in, again, the first act where she's talking to Marianne, and a lot of the stuff she's saying feels like exposition. It's very clear it's exposition. Now, she's a talented actress, and there are certain moments in the screenplay or in the film where she gets to deliver stuff that just kind of, you can't help but put a smile on your face, because it's like, okay, she's going all the way. She's going fully deranged. A particular scene where she's waiting for this vampire to rise from the grave, and she's essentially egging it on, kind of like speaking through the ground to it. Come on, my baby. But yeah, she's really entertaining, like in that particular sequence. When it comes to the more expositional stuff, I feel like because again, I said with the first film, one of the gifts Peter Cushing brings is he's one of those actors that can deliver exposition and make it not feel like exposition. Now, I don't know if it's the performance so much as the script here, but and the fact that she does have to be deranged, so she's got to play this character quite full on and quite deranged. When you couple that with exposition, the fact that it is exposition becomes highly noticeable, and it kind of takes me out of the film for a bit. Martita Hunt is also pretty good as the Baroness Meinster. She's just wacky. She's off kilter, and if you if you look at some of the behind the scenes stuff on this film, apparently she was that way in real life. There's a rather funny story about some crew members trying to get into her room to check on her and not getting a response, and having to climb up a drain pipe and find her almost butt naked in her room meditating and being in a complete trance. Yeah, wacky woman, clearly a very wacky woman, and that is evident through her performance, to be honest. She's very, very wacky, very creepy, I would say. There's something definitely off about this woman, and there needs to be because of the role that she's playing. Yvonne Monlauer, who plays Marianne, not great. Possibly the fact that she's struggling to speak the English. She's a French actress. Her English wasn't spectacular by her own admission, and yeah, I don't know if it's just a language barrier makes it a bit off with me, but I feel like it's not a great performance, and I do think that she was cast, as with a lot of women in the Hammer canon, cast primarily for her looks and possibly the size of her breasts. David Peel plays the Baron, so he's our main villain here. He's essentially taking over as Dracula, and while he's okay, I don't think he's bad by any stretch. He's no Christopher Lee. He doesn't have the menace of Christopher Lee. He doesn't have that seductive charm that Christopher Lee has. Doesn't quite have the charisma. And they give him this like boyish kind of blonde flick haircut that just... This guy was 40 years old. He was in his 40s. And he does look like he's in his early 20s here. So I never truly get any kind of sense of menace from this guy. Like Christopher Lee could appear at the top of some stairs and not say a word, and you got the sense that there was something evil and menacing and off. Whereas Peel, he's too boyish in his appearance, and like I say, while his performance isn't bad, he's very good delivering the lines and all that. I just feel like there's not enough menace there, and when he shows the fangs, like with Christopher Lee, we got and you know, some people saying stop comparing it to Christopher Lee all the time, and I get that. It is unfair, but it is a sequel to that film. So, you know, if you're going to create a new threat, if you're not going to bring Lee back as Dracula and you're going to bring back a new threat, then traditionally in a sequel you need to up the ante. And this film did start out with the title of first it was Dracula 2, but then they moved into the Disciple of Dracula, because that's essentially what this guy is. He's a disciple of Dracula. He just kind of runs away with things. And it feels like that. He doesn't feel like the big cheese. He feels like small fry. There's some humour in this one that does actually work this time around. So in the 58 Dracula, there was some like larger than life humour in there that felt like it was more out of a carry-on film. Whereas here, there's primarily thanks to the performers, the actors. There are a couple of characters that do get a few laughs out of me, either through their manner or because of the situations that arise as a result of what they're doing. One of those is Miles Malleson as Dr. Tobler. So this is a guy who kind of helps Van Helsing. He's no help really. He's there as the primary doctor before Van Helsing gets there. And basically Helsing schools him on just how wrong he is. But this guy is a likable chap. He could have been played as a full-on kind of douchebag who rubs up against Van Helsing, but he doesn't. He's happy. He's just happy to be there, quite frankly, it seems. He's also a little bit unscrupulous because he's happy to make money off Van Helsing. Like, Helsing is there purely out of duty to do what needs to be done, and this guy sees a way to make a buck off him. So he's like, you're going to come with me and help, but do you mind if I charge a fee as you're a specialist, kind of thing. So it's like he's not even going to give Van Helsing that fee. He's going to take it for himself. So that's quite amusing, and again, I think that's in the delivery. Then you've got Henry Oscar as Otto Lang. This is the guy who runs the ladies' school. Yeah, you need a man to run a ladies' school. But yeah, he's quite amusing as well, because he's all like, straight down the line, I've got my moral principles, I won't budge, until he finds out that Van Helsing is someone who's, you know, of import, and then he changes all his ways. And so again, the way he plays that, it works. The humour in the film, when they go for it, works. It doesn't feel out of place like it did with the original film. The star of the show, once again, though, is Peter Cushing, and I do think he saves this film. I think if we'd have had someone else kind of taking on that role, and I know they do something like that in, I want to say the next film, but I think most people would regard it as not being the next film, which is Kiss of the Vampire. It was billed as Dracula 3 when it was first put into production, but it doesn't have Lee, it doesn't have Cushing, and so therefore you could kind of take it just as its own thing. Now, I've not seen it. I do hope to get around to watching it, but I'm not sure I'm going to cover it as part of this series. So yeah, like I say, having Cushing is really what elevates this film. I think if they'd have brought someone else in, like they do with Kiss of the Vampire, and just completely do away with Van Helsing altogether, don't think I would have been engaged. I don't think it would have been as interesting. Yeah, as soon as he's back on screen, I'm invested in the film. I want to see where it goes. There's some nice kind of flurries of action. I mean, nothing like overly spectacular. These films aren't action epics. They're more gothic fairy tales. And yeah, if you like that kind of thing, then that's great. But the final set piece in a windmill, very reminiscent of something from like your James Whale Frankenstein. It's not beyond me that it's probably aping that movie in many ways. Peter Cushing was a bit of a godsend, I think, with regards to bringing in a different script writer. So towards the end of the film, in the original script by Sangster, Van Helsing, well, it wasn't actually Van Helsing at the time, it was a different character. But then when it became Van Helsing, they kept this particular element in and had Van Helsing doing it. And all due respect to Peter Cushing, because he deserves it for saying this, he said no. He said, we can't keep that in there. Van Helsing wouldn't do that. Christianity is his weapon. Well, God is his weapon. Christ is his weapon. You know, crosses, holy water, that kind of thing. That's his weapon against this evil. And in the script, in the original script, what they had him doing was essentially making a pact with evil itself to kind of extinguish evil. And it was Cushing who recognised that was no, that's a big no-no. One, it's a no-no for Van Helsing. He just wouldn't do that. They're not the tools of his trade. And two, a house divided against itself cannot stand. You know, that's if you look at it from a biblical terminology, you can't fight evil with evil. It doesn't work. And it makes no logical sense in that regard. So I like that Peter Cushing stuck to his guns. I like that they brought a different writer in to clean that up. As a result of Peter Cushing sticking to his guns, and it makes the ending certainly more impactful, I would say, than what the original ending would have been. It's a good film. It's entertaining. It's, you know, it's in the typical vein of Hammer. It's got the lush sets. It's nice to look at. I just feel like maybe been too many cooks in the kitchen on this one. As a result, there's elements in there that just feel like hangers on that could have been excised altogether. and maybe weren't excised simply because they were up against the clock to get this film out by a particular date. So back then, you know, they'd have contracts with the likes of Universal, who would distribute the film in America, and they were under contract to deliver it by a particular date. And if they didn't, they would have to pay money each day that they were over schedule. So it stands to reason that elements like that don't get ironed out before it gets released, and therefore they just go with what they've got. So, and it does feel like that in the film. But as I say, still highly entertaining, still worth a watch, especially if you liked the first one, and especially going in to the next one, which for me, with regards to these reviews, is going to be Dracula, Prince of Darkness. If you have seen Brides of Dracula, I'd like to know what you thought about it. So leave your comments down below. Thank you for watching this review, and until next time, cracking.